Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good evening. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee, and I'll be with you for the next hour here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in, 310-441-0555. Tonight I wanted to talk about the art of doing nothing, which I'm sure some of you are listening thinking, okay, finally something I can do. But really the art of doing nothing isn't about just doing nothing at all. Like all things, it depends on why you're doing it, the motivation, intention, the reasons behind it. But there really is value to doing nothing, or we have to understand the value of doing nothing to really understand the value of doing something or of what we're doing. So I'll explain what I mean by that. And there's a quote, I think it's by Gandhi about this, which is, speak only if it improves upon the silence. And I've seen other versions of this quote as well, something like, before you speak, make sure it's true, make sure it's kind. There's another in a quote like that. And then the last one is make sure it is better than the silence that is already there. And I think that encapsulates what I'm wanting to talk about tonight, is that there is this general sense that, well, more is always better or good, or doing something is always better than doing nothing, or someone being there helps more than it hurts. And in general, those things usually are true, can be true, but we don't want to assume that that is the case, that more is always better. Saying something is better than not saying something. Being there is better than not being there. There are very clear cases where that won't be true. But as I said, the important part is to understand why are we doing what we're doing, to understand if it's a good silence or doing nothing or a bad one. Because there's a difference between being passive and choosing to do nothing. Even though the behavior might look like the same thing, the desire, motivation, intention might be very different. So let me give you an example of being passive not necessarily being the same as doing nothing for the right reasons. If someone is afraid of conflict, they get into a situation, they might be upset, they might think something is unfair or not right, but because they are afraid of conflict, they will passively avoid saying anything. Now, someone else might be in the same situation, they see what happens, they feel something, they experience it, like, oh, I don't like this, I don't think this is right. They might recognize in this situation, I don't think it'll be beneficial to say anything, to create a conflict, because, let's just give an example. I'm not going to see this person again and they're leaving and it doesn't make sense to say it, or there isn't the right time to do it. I have to do something else that's more important than bringing up this conflict in this moment. And so I choose not to take action in that way, to create the conflict or to say what I'm upset about or don't like. And so on the outside, they look the same. Two people enter a situation and they both seemingly don't do anything. But there's a difference between the first and the second, because someone who is afraid of conflict and chooses or doesn't do anything, it's not a choice, because for them, essentially, there is no choice. There are no options. They aren't going to say anything no matter what. And that's not the same as choosing not to say something even after feeling and experiencing the feelings of upset or that something is wrong. A similar theme here is that there's a difference between being patient and being passive, even though, again, they can look the same. So, someone is being treated in a certain way, or, someone is being unfair to them, impatient, whatever it might be, and two people don't respond. The passive person isn't responding because they are so patient. They are not responding because they are afraid to, or they are a people pleaser, or it's their comfort zone to not say anything. Someone who is choosing not to, who is patient, genuine patience means they see the situation, but they are, let's say, giving grace to this person, saying, Maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they're upset. So I choose not to say anything yet, and I'll give them some time or a chance to either make it right or stop acting in that way. So again, the surface, if we're just observing them, we think, okay, both of them might look patient to us, or both of them might look like a coward to you, that they should say something. But what's underneath for them is very different. So what I'm saying with the art of nothing is this idea that we have to be open to the concept that not doing something might be our best bet some of the time, but we want to make sure we're deliberately doing nothing, which sounds almost like an oxymoron or paradoxical, to deliberately do nothing. But we can choose not to take action or not to act in that moment. That itself is an action, or definitely a decision. But again, not being passive is really, for me, the important point to emphasize there. Because if we consider, let's say, being helpful, we want to help people. But if we're helping for the right reason, I'm helping because I want to benefit the other person or group or whatever it is. Let's just say other person. So I want to benefit you. Now, the thing is, when we help people, it does feel good. I know this brings up some of this sometimes philosophical debate of, there's no selfless act, because even when you do something for someone else, you feel good. So that's not selfless because you did it to feel good. I can get the concept behind it, but I don't agree with that, because essentially then it makes all behaviors equal. Whether you hurt someone or help someone, it's the same because it felt good to you, or you had some social benefit. And it's I think a bad moral framework to have. So we could say that, but I don't necessarily agree with that. But anyway, coming back to this notion of helping people, it feels good to us when we help another person. But when we help another person, we want to make sure our motivation, our intention, is more selfless than selfish. So it can be, we might do it to feel good, and also we might do it to look good, and that is something we very much have to be cautious of, and I think mindful of, because we can easily fall into that. People will think I'm a great person if I do this. We see this a lot with social media, performative types of things. Let me post something that makes me look good, whether it's like a tweet, I'm saying something, or if I'm doing something, and let me show people that I am doing some kind of community service to help people so they see who I am. We might even tell ourselves, no, I'm not doing it so I look good. I want people to know about the situation, and I want people to know that they can help and encourage others to help. And there's truth to that. Those are actually good things. And to me, that is a dilemma that I think anyone has experienced in their life too, of posting something of, okay, if I post this, will it be to make myself look good, or is it to promote the good cause or promote even helping others? It could be a good thing if everyone, let's say, supported people in some way. Everyone visited nursing homes, for example, and then everyone posted their picture of visiting nursing homes. Then it would start to become a norm, an expectation, and part of the culture, and that would be a good thing. So there is something to this notion that when we share doing good things, it can be a net positive for the world. But as I said, we have to always ask ourselves, what is my motivation? What is my intention? So when we help another person, we know it will feel good to us, but we really want to focus that we are, or make sure our focus is on benefiting the other person. So that means many things, and most importantly, it means helping in a way that the other person appreciates or likes. So, one of the ways we can do that is to ask, if we have that option, say, how can I help you? Right? So, we can say that. So, how can I support you? Someone's going through a tough time, and we don't know what they need. Maybe they need space, which is what would be sometimes doing nothing, which is different from, I don't even think about the person, so I'm not going to call them or see them. Giving them space might be, okay, they want space. So even though I want to help them, the most helpful thing I can do in this moment is to give them space, because that's what they want. I have to help in a way that they want, not what feels good to me. And that's a really important point that seems obvious, but sometimes can get lost in our sense of, sometimes we think we know better. This is very common. Oh no, I'm going to do this for them. They want this. In our Persian culture, unfortunately, what can happen is because of Taruf, we can think the person might tell us they don't want us to do it, even though they want us to do it. And this is one of the unfortunate byproducts of Taruf, is that we enter into these unclear situations. Someone says, oh, would you like me to give you a ride, or would you like me to bring you some food while you're doing whatever it is or going through this tough time? And the person says no. The other person doesn't know, well, do they really mean no? They actually don't want it, they wouldn't appreciate it, or do they feel that they have to say no, for Taruf, for reasons of looking good, or keeping certain airs? And the other person might feel the same way. Did they even really offer it genuinely, or they feel they have to Taruf offering, giving a ride, or supporting in some way? So it's actually unfortunate. As much as we want to be a generous and kind culture, and I think we have a lot of that, Taruf actually gets in the way of that, because there is a performative aspect to offering care, or even giving it. People do it. Somebody's like, oh, I can't believe the person said yes. I didn't want to do it, but I thought I should offer it to Taruf, and they said yes, and now I'm stuck doing it, and I'm frustrated. So it's actually unfortunate, because I think it interferes with us being as kind to each other as possible, because we don't know what people's genuine intentions and desires are from offering things, and what people's genuine desires are from accepting or not accepting things. So we can feel stuck in some ways. But this does get in the way, not just with the Iranian community in general, where people sometimes will assume they know what the other person wants and give something to them. No, they must want this. Often it might be from our own wants. Well, if I was in that situation, I would want that. But people don't obviously all want the same things, even in the same situation. So we have to be mindful of that and not just assume. Another thing where we make it about ourselves is sometimes we like to help in a way that makes us look good, or it's something we're proud of. Oh, okay, they are, moving into a new house. I'm going to make a big painting for them because we think we're a really good artist, and it's going to look really cool for our painting to be in their house. So let me put that for them there. Or, oh, I cook this really amazing dish that everyone thinks is amazing and so good, so I'm going to make that dish for them. Even if we're not sure they want food, or we don't even know if they like that food, or they're allergic to that food, or whatever it might be, we might still say, I want to do what I want to do. Or to give you like an extreme example of what this can feel like to the other person is, you might think, well, I really play beautiful music, so at 4 a.m. I'm going to go play loud music while they're sleeping, because it's such a beautiful song, because I love them, because I care about them. And it's like, no, that's not about your love for them. That's because it's going to make you feel good, or think it'll make you feel good to do the thing that you're good at, or you feel good about that you do. So we have to be very aware of helping in a way that the intention is to benefit the person we're helping. It sounds obvious, but we can very often get stuck in these types of loops that I'm talking about, and not recognize how much of what we want is playing a part in what we choose to do for them. And in the art of doing nothing, we have to recognize that it's very possible not doing something is the best thing. Someone is going through a rough time. We think, oh, I should go visit them. I should bring them something. I should call them. But it might be that they say they want space. And so we do have to ask ourselves, by doing something, am I possibly doing something harmful to them, or something that is not to their liking? And we have to be open to that possibility, that me offering my help, me giving this type of help, may not be what they actually want, and might even be worse than doing nothing at all. And again, getting into a commercial break, I want to emphasize this point. I don't say this to encourage people being passive, not helping, not doing things, thinking, oh, it's the thought that counts. I wanted to help them, but I thought it's not going to help them, so I didn't do anything. It's really to think about it. If we can ask them if that's appropriate, or there's the space for that. But I definitely don't encourage people to be passive, because more often than not, people don't do things that can be helpful. So I think that is more an issue than what I'm talking about today. But I do think it's an important aspect to also consider, that the art of doing nothing means we might recognize that even though we might feel a pull to do something, or maybe we will feel guilty if we don't do something, But if we really deliberate and see that the other person doesn't seem to want our help, we have to be able to hold on to and process that guilt on our own rather than do something because we want to relieve our own guilt. And that's actually another one that I probably will touch on after the break, that sometimes we help or do certain things out of our own guilt, which is not for them, and it's not the art of doing nothing. So let's go to our first commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, I mentioned that one of the reasons we at times will do something that is more about us than the other person is because of a feeling of guilt or to avoid feeling guilty or the fear we might feel guilty. So we think, I have to do something because I'm going to feel bad. And the other person actually might turn out won't want us to do anything or doesn't mind if we don't do anything or might even prefer it, but we might still think, oh, no, I have to do something. And this can seem like, oh, this person's very kind and generous, that they feel like this obligation to do something, but we can see that the obligation is more to themselves than the other person, the person they are saying they want to help. I don't want to feel guilty. No concern about, well, what does the other person think or feel about it, which should be important, or the most important thing when we're going to take some action. What we're saying is for someone, towards someone. But we might not be able to sit with that guilt of not doing something. No, I have to do something that's going to make me feel better. And you see this even with parents and their kids, this sense at times that I have to get involved. I have to do something about it, whatever it is that's going on with their kid, even if it might make things worse to get involved. And I've seen this with parents with kids, dealing with some new issue or struggling with something, and they're trying to figure it out and they need some space, but the parent feels like there's this fear that what if it goes bad or what if it gets worse and I did nothing? I wouldn't be able to live with that guilt, so I have to do something, even though that doing something, getting involved, whatever, reaching out to someone might actually make things worse. So the helping is more about themselves and making themselves feel better rather than making it about the other person, the person that they want to help. So even in the parent-child relationship, we can do things that are for ourselves rather than our kids, even though we think it's all for our kids. And we have to be very aware of this possibility of, doing nothing might be the most helpful thing. As I'm saying that, I'm reminded right now with our baby, let's say my wife is putting him to sleep, and sometimes I might get the sense, I should go help in some way. And so I might open the door, and by opening the door, I might let in some sound or noise that disturbs him falling asleep, and it sets things back. So I really see that me doing something was worse than doing nothing, leaving the space. It could be hard to know. Sometimes maybe I could be helpful, but I do see this happen where I come in and I maybe even knock into something, or the light of my phone, if it's in my hand, I don't realize how bright it is in that dark room, and it's disturbing. And that's actually more hurtful. So with our kids, even, we have to be aware that, of course, there's this strong pull to make sure we're doing things right, fear of doing it wrong, fear of not doing enough, or, not helping enough, or all those kinds of things. And we have to be very mindful of that, because that fear of that guilt that could come up could make us actually do things that are harmful or more hurtful than they are beneficial to them. So this art of doing nothing is this understanding that choosing to deliberately not act can be the most loving thing, the most helpful thing we can do to another person, for another person, even though that might seem paradoxical. But again, it's not just doing nothing because you don't care or you don't want to do something. It's doing nothing because you recognize in this instance, this is the most loving thing, the best thing that you can do. And there definitely are lots of cases where this will come up. Now, I mentioned silence to start the show, and this is really an important element of this art of doing nothing, is recognizing, okay, at times I might think saying something is better or saying more is better, but that's not necessarily the case. It's possible that not saying something or saying less is better than saying something or saying more. And I know I'm on this show where I just talk nonstop, but that is what this show is about. So that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I could actually use silence more. That's something I recognize about my speaking style, that I sometimes will talk too fast. So as I've mentioned many times before, I'm giving advice or talking about things that aren't just for everyone listening. It's also for myself. But when we look at just conversations, or not just conversations, of course it happens in conversations that being silent might be beneficial, but even just in the course of an interaction, we use the word conversation, and sometimes, yes, a phone call is like a conversation, but when you're spending time with someone, conversations come up, but it's not like it has to be a set period of time. Conversations might start and stop, and that can be perfectly okay. And what we actually recognize is that people who can tolerate silences with each other, this is a sign of intimacy and closeness. And if you think about it, people that you don't know very well, it could feel very awkward if there is a silence, or the more you don't know someone, it can feel very awkward if there's a silence, and there's this very strong pull towards keeping the conversation going, not letting it get quiet. If it does get quiet, what's amazing about a silence is that when it's uncomfortable, it feels like a really long time, but sometimes it's literally just 2 or 3 seconds can feel like a long, long time. As therapists, we practice or train in a way this because we recognize the value of silence in so many ways, to, one, giving space to the client, which is exactly what we're talking about. Silence can be better than something because with the silence can give space for reflection, space for processing, space to think about things. Also with the silence, you can allow the client to see what comes up for them next, which can be very important. What's whatever we're talking about connecting to for them. Sometimes it feels very directly related. Oh, we're talking about my sister, and now this is another thing that happened with my sister. Sometimes it feels very unrelated, but those can be really important things because it usually means there's some kind of unconscious connection, something deeper that connects whatever is coming up to whatever was just being spoken about. And that can be really valuable. That someone says, yeah, now I'm thinking about my boss from 8 years ago and whatever. And we're like, oh, okay, I don't know why that came up. But if we explore it, we might see there's a similar feeling there. Oh, yeah, with that person, I did the same thing that I do with my sister, I realized, or they felt like my sister to me and blah, 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 whatever it is. And that can be really meaningful. So, but without that space, if you just say, oh, let me follow up with a question about the sister as soon as they stop talking to make sure there is no silence, it would interfere with the possibility for these things to come up for them and then to come up in the conversation. So, when I say even like train for the silence is because obviously therapists, being normal human beings, we also are not comfortable, or especially initially, with silence. I remember when I was first seeing clients, really was something I had to be very conscious of, especially then, one, there's just the discomfort with silence that we can have. But also when you're a new therapist and you think, do I know what the heck I'm doing? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I want to make sure they don't think I don't know what I'm doing. I want to make sure I'm helpful. I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. All these things that are going through your head. There can also be a fear of silence. How am I going to handle that? Is the other person going to think I'm bad or not good or don't know what I'm doing? And so I remember having a very hard time with that and really practicing and recognizing that I have to sit with that discomfort and really work on it, like building endurance. When you're building endurance, like to run or to, let's say, hold your breath underwater, you have to work on it. It's not easy, but if you keep practicing it, you can build that endurance. And that's what happens here with the silence as well. Also, as you become a bit more comfortable and confident as a therapist, you could handle it in that side of it better too, that, okay, I maybe somewhat know what I'm doing now. And so I can not feel this, constant threat or this potential threat of looking bad or not looking like I know what I'm doing or feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. So you can tolerate that silence even more. But we could really see that those silent moments sometimes can bring up a lot, or even sometimes give them the space to feel. We at times talk in a conversation, just it's more filling the space than really feeling the space. Filling the space more than feeling the space. That we don't let ourselves feel much because that's easier and more comfortable. So let's just keep talking, keep things moving, talk about this, talk about that. But we really don't actually go very deep. But sometimes when you stop, you might let yourself feel what's there for you. What are you feeling? What's coming up? And actually, in a conversation, as much as we are listening to the other person, we actually should be also listening to ourselves, not in the way of, I'm only thinking about what I'm going to say or what I'm going to say next, so I can't wait for this person to stop talking so I can start talking. But we're listening to them, their words, but also their emotions, feelings, what we see between the lines, paying attention to what's coming up for them. But we're also listening to ourselves. What am I feeling? Oh, something they just said made me feel tense, or something they just said made me feel really calm or serene or in love or whatever it is. We pay attention to those feelings, or we're listening to both, but this requires some space and some silence to allow that to happen too. So we're attuned to both sides, but we should leave that space for the feelings to come up. So as I said, don't just fill the space, feel the space in the conversation with one another. So, and with your spending time with each other, as I was saying, it's a sign of intimacy if you can tolerate silence with each other. So sometimes people go on a hike, and it's actually funny. I've heard people joke about this, but you go for a hike and maybe you're getting short of breath, but there could still be this feeling like you have to keep talking because the other person is expecting you to keep the conversation going, for there not to be silence. But some people just embrace that. Okay, we're gonna hike, and part of it will be in silence, or a lot of it might be in silence. Maybe one, because we're catching our breath, but also just to let that be part of the experience as well. And so, again, this is this idea that we have to make sure the silence is adding to the moment. It's, or what we have to say, is adding to the silence. It's better than this, and maybe it's okay. Let's just keep walking together, going together, or you're going on a long drive. There can sometimes feel like this need to keep the conversation going. There shouldn't be any silences, but we can allow for that space to be there, and that could create its own kind of intimacy. Yes, talking to each other can allow us to connect and learn and share and have lots of fun together, but that's one way of connecting. Sitting together with silence is actually also a very connecting kind of a thing. It could be something that brings people together. Or if you're listening to the music without talking or talking about it, and just let it be there and have that experience. So silence is not something to fear, even though it can feel scary. And it can feel scary for lots of reasons. I was saying about when you're a therapist, some of those things, but just in general, we can feel like it could feel awkward. We could feel uncomfortable. We could feel like, are they getting bored, or am I going to get bored, or does it mean like the conversation isn't going in a good place? But another reason why silence can feel scary for us is because in that silence, there is this sense that the person will see us more and potentially could judge us more. So we feel a bit more exposed when we're silent, which is strange because when we're talking, we're obviously saying things, and we could be saying things about ourselves, or at minimum, we're revealing what's on our mind or saying something that we're thinking. But when there's silence, there could be this sense that the judgment is more clear, or there, they can see us more. So we feel even more seen or exposed when there's silence. The conversation can almost serve as this buffer or something in between that protects us from being seen as much. And as much as we want to be seen, we're also afraid of being seen, and especially if we're to be seen and to be judged. And so we can feel more comfortable if we keep filling the space and preventing that lens of what might feel like judgment to be opened up for us to be seen. So, if you look at each other and are in silence, that even more. If you're not looking at each other, it still can be awkward. But if there's eye contact in silence, that can feel like a long time. And something I've done when I work with couples is just to ask them, I've done it in session, but even more I want them to do it by themselves, to just do 1 minute in silence of looking at each other. So eye contact And I mean, of course, I won't say you can't smile or you can't make a certain face, but to just try to sit in the silence together. And what people sometimes find is like, oh, they might joke or smile or, do something silly, which might seem like, oh, we're so playful and fun. And it could be that, but often it's because they have a hard time handling that intimacy of let's just look each other in the eyes and not say anything. Or I've even heard some couples say, oh, we were just, so attracted to each other that we tried that, but after 5 seconds we were kissing and then we were making love and we forgot about the whole exercise. Or yeah, it was a great exercise because it led to us having sex and, connecting in that way. And this can make it seem like, oh, we're just so attracted to each other that we can't keep our hands off of each other. But that might actually be more of a sign that we can't handle the emotional intimacy of looking at one another. So we go to the physical intimacy, which is more comfortable for us and, can mask it by saying it's our deep attraction that makes us not be able to tolerate looking at each other. But actually it's that we can't tolerate just looking at each other. So it is a good sign of intimacy if you can just be comfortable sharing that. It's almost like you are hugging each other with the silence and with your eyes, but without touching. And it's not easy for a lot of people to do this. And it's important to try to look at why. Is there some feeling of being judged one way or the other, some lack of closeness or comfort or trust? It could be just you. Always when we look at these things, to me, there's 3 layers to it. There could be you, there could be them. So you could have stuff, they can have stuff, or it's the in-between, something about your relationship, something about the dynamic between you makes something difficult. And so it's actually very important to recognize this is a good thing. And so in that moment, when you're sharing that silence, you might have the urge to say something, but to me that would be a clear example of when saying something would actually take away from the silence. It wouldn't be adding to the silence. You would be ruining the moment because of your own discomfort rather than adding to it. So it's definitely one of those subtraction by addition moments. And the silence is actually golden there and something that should be valued. But let's go to our last commercial break. We'll continue on the theme of the art of doing nothing. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So today's show has been on the art of doing nothing, which sounds really fun if you're lazy and passive. But as I said, it's not about being lazy or passive. It's the art of recognizing that any action we take has consequences. It's not always a beneficial thing to take some kind of action or do something. I've also given a similar theme when I've talked about advice or the giving and taking of advice. That we might think, well, I'm giving advice. It sounds like a gift to give to someone. And it can be, very well can be. Almost all of us, I think all of us will remember many pieces of advice that someone has given us that was very meaningful, very valuable, and we cherish it. So definitely I'm not saying that giving advice is bad, but it's recognizing that to give advice isn't just something you give. There's also things you take when you give advice. Kind of like when you say something, you're not just adding to the conversation, you're also taking away the silence. When you give advice, yes, you're giving your opinion, your perspective, what the person should do, but you're also taking away their opportunity to think about it for themselves or to not have that interfered with what you are saying, to have that space to contemplate and reflect. Also, depending on how it's done, when it's done, it could be taking away your confidence or your giving of confidence to them to make the right decision, right? So if you're about to do something, say, oh, you should do this. Now, it could just seem like I'm giving you advice and it's very nice, but clearly by giving that advice, I'm also saying you won't make the right choice without my advice. Or if I already see you've made a decision, I'm saying you're making the wrong decision and I'm doubting what you are doing. And so that is something you're taking from them. You're not giving them confidence. You're actually taking confidence often from them. And I should make it very clear, when it's unsolicited advice, especially, is what I'm talking about. So if someone asks you for advice, even then we want to be mindful of how we give it, right? So if someone says, hey, what should I do here? And you say, oh, you have to do this or you should do this. that is making it seem like they don't know, that you have the truth and they don't have an idea. I think it's much better to be aware of them and make them feel like you actually think they could come to the best answer themselves. You might share your perspective since they're asking it, but I think it's important to be mindful of how we even share advice that's asked for when it's solicited. When someone says, "Hey, can you help me?" Then I think, of course, responding is important. And you might even, in some rare, maybe not even that rare of an instance, say, "I'm not going to. I don't want to tell you. I have some thoughts, but I really think you're going to figure this out. I don't think me telling you is beneficial." And I maybe, if I look at this show and I go back to when I was taking more callers, I'm sure there were times where I probably should have said something more along those lines that I don't know, or I trust you to have a better answer than me. There's a sense of the quote unquote expert or the professional. And I'm not saying, they can't be helpful, but of course they can be, but not always. Sometimes they don't know better, or they might even send you the wrong way by giving advice, especially when they don't know enough about the situation. So sometimes you might say, I get it that you're not sure what to do, or if you're asking me, you're trying to figure things out, but I'm not sure I'm going to add to you. I might even get in the way of you figuring it out. So maybe you'd give, they're asking you for one kind of advice, but you might give a different piece of advice. I think you can trust yourself that you'll come to the right place. So even when it's asked for, I think we want to be mindful, not just saying, okay, well, someone's asking for my advice, I can say whatever I want, however I want. They're asking me for it. We still want to be mindful and recognizing that even when we give advice in that situation, we're taking things as well. But especially unsolicited advice. When you go, okay, I'm going to go tell this person what they need to do because I know, what they need to do. And so I see this a lot, of course, with parents. That's one of the most common ones. Well, shouldn't I tell my kid? I know what they need to do. I know they're about to make a mistake. I know they shouldn't date this person. I know they shouldn't pick this career or this major. Shouldn't I tell them? And it's not to say never tell them, but to recognize that when you're giving advice, you're also taking something. And there's a few things there that have to be looked at. The first one is this: I know what's right. And things might feel very clear to us, and we might think we really know, but we have to be very humble with ourselves and recognize, who says we know. We might have a strong opinion or feel a strong urge about something, but we have to be very clear with us so we don't know what's the right thing to do. And even what that means is not clear, because we might think, well, the right thing to do is like the less painful one or something that has a good result for them, but we might interfere with them even going through a growing pain, which might be good for them. So, that's not necessarily even if it is better in the sense that it feels better, ends up better in that moment, it doesn't mean long-term it's better for them. We have to be very mindful of that. But the other thing is when we tell them what they need to do, no, you have to break up, you have to do this, you have to do that. We're doing what I was saying before. One is we're definitely giving them the message that you don't know how to make a decision. You don't know what you're doing. I know you don't know. So we're taking away from them this confidence and taking away from them this ability to build that confidence and competence in making decisions on their own, to trust themselves, and then to trust that they will be able to deal with the consequences, whatever they are, and to go forward from there. And that's really big. I see this a lot. I work with a lot of Iranian clients, and a lot of Iranian young adults, their parents have made almost all the important decisions in their lives. What they should do, who they should be friends with, how to do their work, what to study, what instrument to play, all sorts of things. And then they are thrust into young adult life and have to make really important decisions for themselves, and they have no confidence or no idea of how to make good decisions. They don't trust themselves to make a good decision because their whole life someone has been telling them, I know you don't know. I know what you should do, and if you don't listen to me, you're going to make some stupid decision on your own. You have to listen to me. And so, yes, maybe in that moment it feels good. Oh, I have your guidance to tell me what to do, and now I'm going to get a good result. But you're repeatedly getting this message. You have no idea how to make a decision. And then they have to make these really big decisions about a career if it wasn't decided for them, who to date and marry, big life decisions. And they can feel totally ill-equipped and unprepared to try to make these types of decisions. It can feel very scary for them. And that's what I often see. There's the sense that it's not that they can't get to a goal, it's that they don't even know what their goal is or what they should be doing. I don't know what I should study. I don't know what I want to be. And they tell me I'm good at arguing, so I should be a lawyer. They tell me this, or I heard that, but there isn't this inner compass that is guiding them because they don't trust that inner compass to even hear their voice inside that's saying, what do they want? What do they not like? Where is this coming from to make that decision? So we have to be very, very mindful of what we're interfering with. Oh, I can see this is a bad relationship. We have to break up with this person now. And you might even be right. They're not right for each other. They're going to hurt each other in some way. But we have to let them go through that process a lot of the times to get their heart broken or be with the wrong person even, and to learn from that so that they next time can choose the better person. Because if you're choosing for them, don't be with this person, and then maybe you're thinking, I'll choose the right person for you, that's not going to help them build a good relationship. And if they ever do choose someone, they won't have that confidence of who they are choosing, or that experience of choosing and seeing what happens and dealing with the consequences and learning from it. Oh, I seem to be attracted to these kinds of people, or this issue or that issue. And, you're actually interfering with them building what they need to do better in their life overall. So in those instances, doing nothing, not giving the unsolicited advice would be the more loving thing, even if in the moment it feels like, as I was saying before, the guilt that can come up. I'll feel so guilty. What if I don't tell my son or daughter to break up with this person, and then in 2 months they're crying over the relationship, and I'll feel horrible that I didn't tell them to break up? Well, yes, but this is part of life that they likely have to go through. Not that we want to see them cry, but we understand that to live a life and to make choices and to date and have heartbreak and to try to date and find a good partner, it's something that involves risk and getting hurt and all sorts of things that has to be there. We can't try to protect them from all those things and prevent them from all of those bad things happening. Then they're not actually in it, I want you to go play sports, but every time you get hurt or might get hurt right before, I'm going to jump in and grab you or push the other person away. Well, they're not going to get stronger, and they're not going to really know how to handle their body and handle, being in the game if you're always there preventing the bad things from happening. And as I was saying before, what's very important to keep in mind, you don't know what you think you know. You might think you know the best outcome. You might think you know how things are going to go, but that is a fiction. You're telling yourself that you have the right answer for them. So here we can see the art of doing nothing is recognizing, I really feel like I know this is the wrong decision. I really feel like this is going to end bad and they should do this rather than that, or, this is the right decision. But I want to give them the opportunity to make their own decisions. I don't want to take away that ability or that opportunity to make their own decisions. I want to give them the confidence that I believe in their ability to make a decision and to deal with whatever the consequences of that decision is. I don't want to take that from them, because that's actually very, very valuable to not do that. So, someone might think, oh, you didn't care about your kid. You saw them doing something that wasn't good and you didn't stop them. But that's not the same thing. So again, as I said, it's not about being passive or indifferent and you don't care. It's choosing to do nothing because in that moment you think that is the best thing, the most loving thing in the bigger picture, even if it potentially is more hurtful in the moment. So this art of doing nothing that I've talked about today, we can see that there is a lot of value of choosing not to act, or choosing to take the action of not doing something, choosing to not say something rather than thinking I have to say something. In this case, I was saying giving the advice, but saying something in a conversation, adding something, thinking we're adding to the moment when really we might be taking away. What you're saying might take away the silence, which might be very beautiful and might have its own significance and its own meaning and its own value to it. Thinking you're helping when what you're doing is really not for them, it's for you. I want to feel good, or I want to look good, or I want to make sure I don't feel guilty because I think I will if I don't do something. And so I'm going to do something and it's going to feel good to me. That's very selfish and not selfless at all. And so you might choose to give space, or you might choose not to take action or to get involved in some way, not because you care, Not because you don't care, because you actually care so much. And also, as I said, we have to be careful not to mistake passivity or being passive with being patient or not taking action for the right reasons. On the surface, they might look the same. To an outsider, they might look the same, but our desires or our intentions might be very different. When we're being passive, essentially, it's not that we're choosing not to act. It's that we almost feel like we can't act or we're too afraid to act. And that's not the same thing. To not act because you're scared is not the same thing as to not act because you think it's the wisest and best thing to do. So, as always, there's not one kind of advice that's right for everyone. For someone listening, they might be too passive, and so I wouldn't want them to hear this message of the art of doing nothing, making it sound so beautiful that, oh, it's so good that I'm passive because, there's this art to what I'm doing. I'm an artist now. No, you might be very passive, and that's not a good thing. And for many people, they might be too involved doing too many things and not recognize that sometimes doing nothing might actually be better than doing something. Giving someone space might be better than impeding on their space. Not giving advice might be better than giving advice, because when you give advice, you take some things away from that person too. So there is a genuine art to doing nothing that we can all recognize. All right, that brings us to the end of tonight's show. A big thank you to Farid here in the studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Zan Zendegi Azadi.